And at that time, I got offers both can go either tech companies, big tech companies, or can go to pharma. So that choice at that time, my thinking process is more if I go tech, I kind of started new. But if I go farmer, I can utilize all my knowledge I learned on the business side. My PhD, the chemistry knowledge still matters.
Mhm.
And I don't think I'm gonna start from fresh new. So at that time, I think I made the conscious decision to decide to just go for farmer. Although, to be honest, we always know the tech industry pays more, but
Yeah.
sometimes you just have to think about it's like, does pay matters more to you, or do you think the type of work matters more? And also think about what kind of work-life balance matters.
Welcome to Personal Finance Cat, where I share my personal take on personal finance.
Welcome to the show, Vivian. It's been so long. So good to see you. How have you been?
Doing good. Good to see you too. It has been a while. Nice to catch up.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for getting on the show. Well, before we start, I just want to read out a brief intro. Thank you for writing that up. It's very impressive. So, Vivian is currently the Director of Portfolio and Strategy at AstraZeneca. Prior to AstraZeneca, Vivian was a senior consultant with Deloitte's supply chain and network operations practice, where she successfully advised, implemented, and operated business and digital transformations for life sciences clients. Her other professional accomplishments include 8 years of project and product management experience working in the scientific instrument industry for corporations including Shimadzu Scientific Instruments, Agilent Technologies, and Bruker Daltonics. During her tenure, she managed and supported product development of both custom software and hardware for pharmaceutical and biotech, clinical labs and hospitals, forensic labs, chemical and energy, environmental, consumer packaged goods, and university clients. She has supported products and clients in 40 plus states in the United States and 4 overseas countries, including Spain, Germany, China, and Japan. Maybe I'll just add a little bit. You and I knew each other from graduate school, and I knew that you got your PhD in chemistry. We pretty much, I think, overlapped. Maybe you were a year earlier than me. We certainly hung out a lot. I know that you were also very active in all kinds of student organizations and activities. So I still have very fond memories of hanging out with you. Do you want to add anything to that intro?
No, I think that intro already is pretty comprehensive. And
Yeah.
yes, Handy and I, we go way back.
Yeah.
So I think like I'm a year ahead of you when we were
Right.
in graduate school. And I did, or I think back then, I think I really just enjoyed organizing events and do these kind of things, which kind of explains my career path after I graduated and how I go from the scientific career path to a more business oriented route.
Yeah. No, that's a perfect segue for our first question. Oh, I just wanted to add, you were the president of the Chinese Students Organization at Emory. So your leadership shone through from very early on. From the time I knew you. Okay, so then, perfect segue to the first question. Like I said, how are you able to transition from being a scientist to a strategy and operations professional?
I think that has been the journey since I started to work. I started work as more technical role, and during that time, I had experience encounter different organizations such as sales team, marketing, and R&D. And while working with team, I actually realized that I really enjoyed working with cross-functional teams. I think however, my technical skills, especially hand-on skills on hardware, etc., is probably not as good as my business skills. So I think that's kind of where I started to more take on projects or roles that's more oriented to product management and project management. And I think the whole change has been pretty intentional. However, the changes happen slowly. it has been quite the process. And then when I become the full-time project manager during my time at Shimadzu, I've decided it's time for me to gain more business sense. And that's the time I started to apply for business school, and I got into Georgetown as the part-time business school student. So with that experience and later the consulting experience at Deloitte, I managed to land my current job at AstraZeneca as more like the operational business type of role. I think in current role, I kind of can utilize all the skills I learned before. So I would say it's a pretty long journey, but I wouldn't say I carefully planned everything. A lot of things just happened, but I'm also intentionally just look for opportunities both internally and externally to be able to make my career more aligned to the path I want to go.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. And maybe we can go back a little bit if you don't mind. So your first job was at Bruker Daltonics, is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. And your first role, you said it was more on the technical side, right? Was
Yeah,
that?
so I think like usually for us graduate from graduate school, it's usually the easiest to get a more technical role
Uh-huh.
in the company as the entry level. So that was I work mainly as application engineer. So what I do is my company manufactures these scientific equipment for analyze different compounds. So I am responsible for develop method package and also support the clients to help them train them how to use the equipment and help them analyze the product as needed. So as you can see, it started as a very technical role, but the good thing for that role is I work very closely with the sales team because in sales scenario when they trying to introduce these $500,000 or $250,000 products to the client usually requires some kind of showcase if this thing actually going to work for their purpose. So that's where I come in. I have to demonstrate the product value from both the scientific portion and work with the sales team to think about what kind of sales pitch or angle we need to present to the client. So I think that is a very good experience for me to encounter the world a little outside of just technical and the laboratory.
Got it. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because for some reason I sort of remember that your role had a little bit to do with sales, and now that makes perfect sense. So then you mentioned that you transitioned at some point to product management. Did that happen at Agilent Technologies or at Shimadzu? How did that?
Yeah, so for that one, I'm at the it happened in an interesting time point because after 2 years being in that role, I had some family emergency. I actually have to move back to China to take care of the family member. So
Mhm.
I think like because I move, I have to look for a new position because my previous company's presence in China is not as good as some of the competitors.
Mhm.
So that's why I got into Agilent. And at that time, they trying to build something called the China Solution Center in China. So they trying to really be the industry leader and develop, we call it turnkey method, and sell that method package to the client. So historically, for instrumentation companies, this kind of method development is usually for free. It's kind of you get this kind of service because you purchase the hardware and the software. So
Mhm.
they are the leader to trying to monetize this kind of method packaging and method development as intellectual properties.
Mhm.
So I joined that team at its initiation, and I think at that time they trying to do like some showcase products and make a good impact. It's kind of like show and tell to show the senior leadership this kind of business model works.
Mhm.
So that is actually a great opportunity for me. We started as a very small team, 3 people actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so where you have only 3 people, you cannot do everything.
Everything. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, you go from develop the product, then you set up roadmap, you work with project managers on the strategy, then you think about how to do marketing. So you literally have to work with marketing team to generate marketing materials, think about how to penetrate the market. And on the other side, you have to train the service engineers how to use your product. And then you also have to work with the sales force and basically identify, we call them key opinion leaders in the industry,
Yep.
to actually ask them to test use our products first, and then they can be our sponsor at different conferences to marketing our products. So you kind of had the chance to do it from beginning to the end. So that's the time I think I did a lot of product management, and I think I really enjoyed how we can, like, you can see kind of your baby go from beginning all the
Hmm.
way to be a successful product. And I think during that time, because our first case is quite successful, we actually penetrated most of the clients in that niche market. I would say over 50% probably. So that's later I think I spent 3 years there, and our team really grew quite significantly from just 3 people.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Yeah. So it was smaller company, sounds like, maybe when you started, or it's just this one product was small.
It's just that business model is small,
Okay.
and
Okay.
we just want to do a testing site. The
Mm.
company is actually, I would say, in that industry, it's probably one of the top 3 companies in that industry.
Okay. Okay. Gotcha. Okay. Now that's a perfect combination of kind of being on a small team and learning a lot and grow really fast and having the resources of a large company to support you. So
Yeah.
that's great. Okay, so maybe jumping to the next question. You mentioned that it wasn't necessarily fully planned, your whole career path up until this point, but it sounds like there was at least some guiding principle, right, for you to be wanting to transition from a technical role to more of a business oriented role. So, what motivated you to kind of have that in mind and take actions to get there?
I think for me, it's always about I try to balance my work life balance and also what actually makes me happy at work.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
Because and also like what I'm good at. Like I mentioned earlier, what I learned in my first role is I'm good at presenting things to showcase the value, and I'm good at developing methods using software, etc. But my hands-on things on hardware is pretty limited. I would say probably even below average. Um, so these kind of things, when I think about it, I was like, that is actually, if I want to go this like technical route, that can be pretty limiting of how I can develop myself. However, there's this more business side I'm really interested in, and based on my colleagues' feedback, I'm really good at it. And I think like because of that, I'm more leaning towards to do things like the things that interest me and the things I like. And along the way, I have to say I got some really good mentors and really good managers who actually willing to help me develop all the skills and trust me to do things. I think that like helps a lot as well. And I think throughout the whole thing, one thing really helped me is I always seek for kind of an official mentor in my career. It doesn't necessarily be my manager, but it's someone in the area I want to be and who are willing to coaching me and give me the resources and the guidance I needed. I think that kind of helped to shape my whole career and where I want to be.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Can you maybe talk a little bit about the mentorship piece? Because I know that that's very critical, right? And then it sounds like you intentionally sought out mentors, like you said, in the areas that you want to be in. So how did you identify the mentors, and how do you usually interact with them, and how do they provide guidance and resources to help you out?
I think I would say my first official mentor is he made a huge impact on my career. He's actually the one even helped me find my first job. It's quite interesting.
Okay.
I attended a conference and presented a talk when I was in graduate school, and he was at that talk as well. And his team is actually doing something related with my work.
Mhm.
So we kind of chatted a little bit afterwards and shared information back and forth just to help him with some of their roadblocks, etc. So when I'm trying to look for jobs, I kind of, like do all the graduate students do. We reached out to any possible lead we know to see if there's
Mhm. Of course.
opportunity. And he's the one actually went over the length to actually personally introduce me to the hiring manager and give me glorious reference to
Uh-huh.
the point the hiring manager later after he hired me, he's like, we weren't planning to hire someone fresh without work experience, but
Uh-huh.
since you had such like amazing reference,
Yeah.
we ready to give you a shot. So actually that helped me landed my first job. So at that time, I wasn't more like intentionally look for mentor. It's more like because that connection, whenever I have issues at work or encounter something, I build that trust with that person. And I would always go back to him to ask for things like how to handle certain situations. So I would say my first biggest mentor and who made a huge impact on my career, that wasn't intentional.
Right.
And it just happened. But later on, as I attend different seminars or like internal networking, you start to learn from senior leadership. They give you suggestions and how to look for mentor. And that's the time, basically, they tell me, what you want to look for, you look for the people. First, they have to truly care about you and like you.
Yeah.
And also, it should be somewhere you are interested.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it not doesn't necessarily to be your line manager, because sometimes it's hard to open up completely with your line
Yeah.
manager with conflicts of interest. So I usually sort out someone outside of my direct line management. Sometimes maybe even outside of my department, and it should be someone I observed and heard from other people who are really just willing to help people grow.
Mm-hmm.
So then sometimes I just reach out to them. It's like, hey, this is me, introduce myself, and ask them if they can be my mentor. But before that, I usually try to do some kind of project or have some kind of interaction with them. So
Mm-hmm.
they at least know it's like, oh, Vivian exists and what kind of work she does. So when you ask for the mentorship, it won't be too out of blue. It's like, who are you? Why are you asking me, right? So that's so I've been always following that role, like that rule, and trying to look for a good mentor for me throughout my career in every company.
Yeah, no, that's great. Because I recently read the book Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg, and
Mhm.
she says something similar to what you were saying, that you really probably don't want to just reach out of the blue and ask really awkwardly, can you be my mentor? But rather, this type of relationship should be kind of natural, and there is some background or common project or something that you worked on, some kind of entry point, and then you will know pretty obviously that there could be a mentorship that is mutually beneficial. So that's why I'm very interested in this topic, because right now I'm also kind of trying to figure out the best way to find a mentor. But thank you for
Mhm.
sharing your tips. So then, among this, I guess, along this journey, what is your biggest challenge or biggest challenges that you had to overcome?
Yeah, I would say definitely there's a constant internal debate of where I want to go. because I think like when now I look back in my career, I would say I was like, oh, mostly I kind of in general sense heading to where I want to be. But when you are in the process, there's a lot of internal debate. It's like, oh, should I do this? Should I do that? Even when I look for new job opportunities, when you get multiple offers, you always like, what do I pick, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's it's definitely more a personal decision a lot of times. For example, when I graduated from Georgetown, and at that time I worked at Deloitte, and people thinks a lot of my friends think, oh, Deloitte is amazing platform. I should like trying to make a career there, but deep in my heart, I know that's not the type of career I'm looking for. And
Mm-hmm.
at that time, I got offers both can go either tech companies, big tech
Mm-hmm.
companies, or can go to Pharma. So that choice at that time, my thinking process is more if I go tech, I kind of started from like started new.
Mm-hmm.
And and also, but if I go farmer, I can utilize all my knowledge I learned on the business side, but my PhD, the chemistry knowledge still matters.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think I'm gonna start from fresh new. So at that time, I think I made the conscious decision to decide to just go for farmer. Although, to be honest, we always know the tech industry pays more, but
Yeah.
sometimes you just have to think about it's like, does pay matters more to you, or do you think the type of work matters more? And also think about what kind of work-life balance matters. So I think like these kind of choices are very personal decisions. I think I recall when I was in graduate school at that time, everyone's like all my MBA classmates trying to graduate. There's a lot of these debates happening with everyone. It's
Yeah.
like how to choose the offer. I
Mm-hmm.
think when we have a group of people who are going through the same journey, we can bounce ideas off from each other. And that also helps each of us to decide where we want to go. And we can also talk to our alumni and to see what kind of work are you expecting with all your career move. Ultimately, that's the kind of decision everyone has to decide for themselves. You
Yeah.
want money, you want a work-life balance, you want to build the skills, or is there a specific industry or a specific sector or the roles you want to go? But yeah, so that's kind of how I decided along the way, kind of every time I switch job, which is more important to me.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very well said. And I think that you have a pretty unique career path, I would say, because a lot of the PhD friends that I have, they stay in their lane, so to speak, right? So I have a PhD in econ, and my career so far up to this point has been in the same area. And then other friends that I have, they usually stay in, let's say, chemistry, biology, whatever else. And it's kind of unusual to see people who can transition, especially from more like a scientific technical background to business. And then it sounds like there were a lot of choices that you made along the way. And you mentioned that the MBA program, it sounds like it's very helpful and instrumental because you have peers that you can bounce ideas off of. You have other alumni who can maybe provide guidance. So that's kind of maybe my next question is, how did you decide to go for the MBA? And it sounds like it's totally worthwhile. And can you also talk about what are the other valuable things you got out of it?
Yeah, I think that decision is actually so I was that time I moved after my time in China. My I decided to move back to the U.S. So
Mm-hmm.
I moved back to the U.S. Worked at Shimadzu, and at that time I'm the full-time project manager for all the projects in our R&D center.
Mm-hmm.
So because of that role, I encountered a lot of things regarding the budget. So I interact a lot with our finance folks. And at that time, I realized actually there's a lot of finance knowledge I'm not sure of in this discussion. So I was like, so I was more initially think about, I feel like MBA is a bigger commitment. What if I don't like it? So I actually had someone actually suggest to me back then, which is amazing suggestion, to ask me to take one of the classes from Harvard online. It's called, I think it's back then it's called the CORE Core, but I think now they rebranded and changed the name. So basically, it's 6 months course with three components. One is accounting, one is economy, and one is, see, I already forgot the other piece, but it's I think it's called business fundamental. So basically, yeah, it's the basics you would learn in the business world. And it's pretty low commitment. You probably do, I would say, maybe 5 hours a weekish.
Okay.
And then you actually go to some testing center to do the actual tests, and
wow.
they give you a certificate, the type of thing. So I think that just for me to have a sense check if I actually like these kind of things at all. So I think during the 6 months, I actually really enjoyed the business side of things like economy and economics and the accounting.
Okay.
So after that, I also discussed with some of the classmates in the same class. So after checking with everyone bouncing ideas off, I finally decided to apply for the MBA program. But even when I applied for it, I applied both part-time and full-time. At that time, I was still unsure, to be honest. And then after I got the offer letter from different schools, I have the full-times with a scholarship or the part-time. So that time, it's kind of a hard debate for me because if I go full-time, I can get full scholarship ride, but I still have to go from my own expense to cover the living expense. And then I lose 2 years of work experience. But if I go part-time, it's a longer program. It's 3 years program instead of 2 years. And then, of course, because they expect you to do part-time, you have full-time job.
Right.
Usually, this kind of thing, they don't have any scholarship. You pay the full price. But you are not losing. You are not gonna lose 2 years or 3 years of like work experience. So I think like it's a difficult balance for me back then. Even until the last minute, I was still debating. So finally, I think I took the less risky route, which is I did the part-time. So now, in retrospect, I would definitely, whoever trying to pursue that route, I would definitely encourage people to go maybe full-time instead, because when you are full-time, you do get a lot of perks to be in that program. You can be fully immersed, because the school does have a lot of seminars, a lot of very useful networking and training sessions. When you have a full-time job, like they are open to you, but you won't have the time to attend. So I feel that's the part I really miss, and that's actually plays a big important role in the MBA program. So that's the part I actually feel a little regretting. I didn't choose the full-time. So for you guys who are thinking about doing a MBA program, I would definitely recommend the full-time one.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. I probably haven't thought about it that way, but that's definitely, I think a huge aspect of the MBA experience, right? Because I think the learning is really a part of it, maybe even a small part of it. It's really the networking and the extracurricular things you can do at the MBA program. Yeah. So did you have a concentration in your MBA program?
So my school, we don't really have a concentration. It's not mandatory. However, if you want to do it, you can pick. They call it a different certificate you can get. I think I get the strategic consumer analytics certificate
Okay.
because it's more like analytical. You combine both math skills with the business,
Mm-hmm.
and but I know some schools for concentration it's mandatory. So it's depending on different MBA program you're gonna pick. So that's also part of the things. I would suggest people just do full research before you apply to
Mm-hmm.
know what kind of emphasis each school has. For example, Georgetown, where I went, because it's based in DC,
Mm-hmm.
they are really strong in anything regarding policy, which
Mm-hmm.
is kind of expected, right? Uh,
And
I,
California, I would think they focus on entrepreneurship.
yeah, entrepreneurship. So that actually really like plays into the choice as well.
Mm-hmm.
Where the school is based, what's their concentration, etc.
Yeah,
I wish I thought of that more instead of just to focus on the location back then. For me, it's more like I don't want to move type of thing.
yeah, no, makes sense. Yeah, it's a very good school, so I'm sure you made a good decision in any event. But did you think that the MBA really helped you kind of transition to your next job, which is at Deloitte, right? After you
Um,
finished?
Yeah, so I actually I did it's my first year into the program when I was still working full time at Shimadzu.
Mm-hmm.
After that is actually one thing about part time MBA program. They have the perks that full time don't have is all your classmates sitting in the same classroom with you every day. They all have a job, which means they all work at different companies. So they can be your network. For
That's right.
example, I have a lot of classmates who work in consulting, the Big Four, even the McKinsey, BCG people. So we had a lot of talk back then. It's like what kind of consulting life gonna look like, what things they do, and of course, the valuable internal referral, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's how I got into Deloitte. I was in their commercial practice at that time. I think like it's definitely a very tough environment because you have. I've never worked with so many Type A personality people all together at once. Coming from like a scientific heavy background,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
everyone's pretty like I think Handy, in our world, people are pretty like relaxed.
Laid back, yeah. Uh-huh.
So that was quite the culture shock for me. But I
Mm-hmm.
think that experience, I look back, it does really make you grow a lot. I
Mm-hmm.
joke with my friends. I was like, working there 1 year make me aged 5 years,
Yeah, yeah,
but I also probably gained 5 or 10 years of experience,
yeah. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
which I wouldn't get from my other job because
Mm-hmm.
I feel like during that 1 year time, every day for me, it's like a training camp, but
Yeah,
you actually still get paid.
right.
So not a bad deal, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Learn on the job while getting paid. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, no, that's funny that you share that. Yeah, that's kind of my question for you as well is transitioning from kind of a regular I'll call it in-house role to consulting must be challenging because I think most people go the other way, right? They will start in consulting and then they will go in-house, and then I was just wondering how you decided to make that transition. And it sounds like maybe it was your network, your classmates at the time, who probably convinced you, or maybe you were already interested. So, can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit more about that? How did you decide to go for consulting?
Yeah, so that one is actually that stemmed from my conversation with our career center and my classmates. I more at the time I was like, I don't know what I want to do next.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of feeling I can do this, I can do that, and I can even do that, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where I want to focus, right?
Uh-huh.
So then I one of my friend and the classmates, he's like, that's the perfect reason why you want to join consulting,
Mm-hmm.
because when you join consulting, you don't really have to pick. we do projects so fast. Each project is different, and you can pick different roles in a different project, and your client can be different. You can go from, like, if you want to focus, like I did back then, I always know I want to be more life science. So I focused on life science clients, but I had opportunities. People ask if I want to working on project on CPG companies or marketing companies, etc. So you really can, like, encounter all these things you would never encounter in such fast speed in a regular job. So
Right.
I think for me, doing consulting, it's more like that's my way of trying to figure out what I want to do and which industry I want to focus and what kind of projects gonna make sense. Which I think that's literally happened in that 1 year. I think I did during that 1 year. I worked for five different clients, and then also did a lot of Deloitte internal initiatives. And my roles bounce from help companies do reorganization of their org structure to help companies set outsourcing strategy to modernization of their financial IT system, etc. So it really ranged a lot, and every project make me think. It's like, do I like this? Do I not like that? What's the part I like and dislike? So I think that's why towards the last 3 months, I was kind of had a much better sense, which is the area I definitely don't want to do, and which other areas I would like to do. And at that time, I think the school recruiting also started. So there's a lot of like job searching in that area. So I think that's finally how I decided to come to this role after consulting. But I would say it definitely was quite a struggle because I think a lot of people join consulting when they fresh graduate from school in a lower level, and then you can get properly trained. But when us join at the senior consultant level, there's a lot of expectations already have for you. There's definitely a fast pickup period. I would say it was initially it was pretty painful, but I think after year towards the end, I think I feel already pretty comfortable with the projects, how you deal with client. I think that experience definitely also helped me grow very thick skin.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is actually one of the biggest assets I got.
Oh yeah, definitely. Cool. That's awesome. So maybe we can talk about your current role, which is in strategy, right?
Yeah.
And was that one of the areas that you worked on at Deloitte, strategy consulting?
Yeah, I think like that's definitely my current role. I think it combines both strategy, scientific, and financial sense, like all in one. So in my current role, I work for this department. I work for two departments, equally 50-50 time split, but more from almost the outsider point of view,
Okay.
because I help them do the financial planning, FP&A, monthly financial reports, headcount, strategy, footprint planning, these kind of things. So you can see these kind of things. It's almost like what you do as a consultant for a client.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the other portion is you help organize the leadership meetings, organize the department meetings. You help the leadership update, like do these kind of update to senior leadership. So for these kind of things, it's kind of what they teach you at a business school. It's like how to showcase your best value. And there's other portions. I lead a lot of initiatives, help the initiative go like from initiation to build the team, to set up the structure. And once everything is smooth running, you hand it over to the project team. So I think all these skills in the current role, it kind of aligns well with what they expect outside consultant to do.
Yeah.
So it's kind of you're still doing consulting, but all your clients are internal stakeholders, which makes it much less stressful.
Yeah, I can see that. So as you mentioned, the three pieces that you work on, if I capture that correctly, financial planning, footprint planning, headcount planning. So where did you accumulate the skills to be able to execute those? Is it from the MBA or from your other roles in the companies that you worked for?
Yeah, so I think that is, I think the financial piece, it's slowly building from all my previous roles. Because when I worked in Agilent in China, when we develop a product, we have to think about what kind of investment, what kind of ROI you're going to get, and how to set quota, all these kind of things. And when I do work at Shimadzu as a project manager for R&D, it's more focused on funding for each project. There's like all these balance you have to do. It's like how to utilize limited funding to make the most impact and how to request funding. So I would say for the financial planning piece, it's kind of like building along the way. And then these kind of footprint strategy, it's more learn on the job. And they also all the knowledge you learned at business school, especially during case study, it can show you how you can do your strategic thinking to do these kind of things. So I would say some skills, it's like you build along the way. Some schools, some things you learned from business school, some things you just learn on the flight at the job.
Right.
It's like fake it until you make it thing.
Yeah, no, I think that makes total sense. I want to maybe go back a little bit to one thing that you mentioned when you had multiple offers after you finished your MBA. There was AstraZeneca, obviously, and then there were some big tech companies. And you mentioned the reason why you decided to choose this role is because of multiple factors of work-life balance and interest and past experience. But I'm just wondering, kind of, with the way things are evolving, right? Because, for example, AI is a huge thing and everybody's talking about it. I wonder if you kind of take into account in your consideration the future prospect of different industries. And if so, can you talk a little bit about that? And especially, I guess, the advantage of being in pharma versus tech.
Yeah, I think like at that time, we both experienced the past 2 years. It's kind of an interesting time in everyone's life, right?
Yeah.
So I part of my thinking process back then, I feel at this point of my career, I want to be like pay is nice, but I also want to be in industry that is more less cyclical.
Okay.
Like less impacted by all these like uncertainties in the world. Because for pharma companies, whether the economy is good or bad, people get sick. They need medication. So it's kind of like relatively stable, I would say. And also, I mentioned it before, I can still utilize all my scientific knowledge. And I really enjoy working with scientists. I think I just feel very comfortable in the environment working with a lot of scientists. So that is part of the reason. The other one, why I didn't go with tech, it's actually the things I learned later is the pay structure. It also plays into the play because I realized that for tech, your base may not be that high. A lot of comes from stock. However, in traditional industries outside of tech, it's still more like salary based plus a little bit bonus. It's not like a lot of your compensation is not relied on stock. So that also plays into the decision making. And also another thing is also people. I think people in tech versus people in the science world, it's just a little different. So
Mm-hmm.
for me, always my whole entire education, I always in that environment. I love working with all these scientists. They make me feel ease, and I feel that's the environment I'm most comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think ultimately it's combined the pay structure, how stable the industry is, and what type of people I would like to work with. Ultimately, it comes to my final decision. And another portion played a big into that time is, for example, Amazon. They for the school hires. I don't know about how they do social hire, but for a lot of school hires, the first year they expect you to move to Seattle to be there for a year
Mm-hmm.
before you can choose where you want to be in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing, such as Wayfair, they want you to move to the New England where the headquarters is.
Mm-hmm.
So ultimately, that also comes to the decision. It's like, do I really want to move to where these big tech companies want me to move, or do I want to stay locally?
Right.
So yeah, ultimately, all these decisions together to make me make the final choice.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay. Sounds good. And then maybe kind of to pivot a little bit, looking back at your whole career path, was there anything that you would like to have done differently?
Um, I would say I would probably start to do business school a little earlier.
Okay.
Just because I think I was because my international move, I was unsure about a lot of things back then, and just trying to be more play safe.
Mm-hmm.
But looking back, I feel for all the changes, it's always make all the changes early than later.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah, so I would say that's the biggest thing, and I think other than that, I would say overall, I think in the main direction, I'm happy at where I am. Of course, I'm still figuring out my how to grow my career next within my current role, how to expand the responsibilities, where I want to be in the future, these kind of thing. But I feel this kind of thing, it's always like it's a zigzag. It's
Yeah.
like never really like clear path, and a lot of times even you think it's like, oh, in 10 years I want to be here, it doesn't really happen this way. It just like sometimes naturally happens. So
Yeah.
I think I also learned along the way to just go with the flow, don't
Mhm.
over planning things.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
you need to have some guiding principle, but don't try to control every single details.
Yeah. No, that's great advice. That's what I wanted to hear. um, and then, was there a best decision you made along the way, or were they multiple small decisions that kind of added up?
Um, I would say if I look back, it's more like a lot of small decisions add up together. Because like I can't think of like a one single determination point that gonna like deter my career a lot. But I would say I notice every time I take a big risk, the return is always bigger.
Mm-hmm.
So I would usually suggest people don't play safe,
Uh-huh.
especially like I think like for people early in their career, try different things to see which you like. Because I feel a lot of times you think you want to do something maybe because you haven't seen what are the things on the other side yet.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you are more beautiful to the other things, you can do it even better. So
Right.
just go out and try.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. It's great advice. All right. So then, my final question for you is, besides that great advice you just offered, were there any other suggestions, advice, recommendations that you want to provide to young, aspiring, especially female professionals?
Um, I would say just grow a thick skin, and and also trying to have a positive mindset when things gets tough. Because what I learned during my career, it's usually when you are in a very tough spot, how you handle it, how you seek advice, that helps me grow the most. Usually, sometimes I feel I learn more from a bad manager than from a good manager, to be honest. So just don't get too upset when things get tough. It's a good experience.
Yeah, that's great. I definitely second that. I think it's my experience as well, especially that bit about learning from the bad manager.
Right? It teaches you to be tough.
And what not to do.
Exactly.
Thank you so much, Vivian. This has been great. I don't know if you want to share where can people find more about you if they are interested in reaching out to you or things like that.
Yeah. If you would like to reach out to me, I'm available on LinkedIn. It's Vivian Chen, and I'm happy to connect with people. Like I said, throughout my career, I had a few really amazing mentors, and I'm always interested to help people develop, just to pass all the things I learned from all my mentors.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
You are welcome. Nice chatting.